We all love the iconic heroines of Miyazaki movies, and the iconic female villains as well, and of course it's something I want to try to understand and learn from for my own writing, but when I've tried, there's been this really odd problem I've encountered. Starting out just trying to understand what it is I'm seeing, it's very easy to start listing characteristics of these women like independent, strong, empowering, courageous, full of emotion. You can talk about how they defy gender norms, you can talk about their agency, and if that's your list and you're going to use that to try to put pen to paper, you're not going to get a Ghibli character. You're going to get Katniss Everdeen, you're going to get Wonder Woman, you're going to get Vi, you're going to get Gwen, which isn't a bad thing, but what I'm saying is that it feels like we've developed this terminology to describe good female characters based on the types of female characters that are popular in Western fiction. And it's not like these terms don't apply to Miyazaki heroines. They apply, it's just it feels like they're not capturing enough. They're slightly off the mark, or they're too general, or they're just straight up the wrong word to use. Like take Chihiro. Is Chihiro empowering? I won't say no, but is it the best term to use? Is she strong? Yeah, in a way, by a certain point in her arc, but again, not the first word I jump to. Or you take a character like San, who definitely is strong, but is San independent? Is that really the word you would choose for a soldier locked in a hopeless war she never asked for? Not really. Or like San defies gender norms for sure, but even that just feels like the first baby step in describing what's going on with her in terms of gender stuff. Like just in this first scene where Ashitaka meets her, she is a soldier returning from the battlefield. That's very traditionally masculine, but she quickly takes on this nurturing role for her wounded family member, which is kind of more traditionally feminine. But what she's doing, how gritty it is, how dirty, how gruesome, that feels more masculine. But at the same time, she looks freaking beautiful somehow with her mouth all covered in blood. But the impact of that beauty isn't supposed to be like attraction exactly. It's not sexualized at all. It's like Ashitaka taking the beauty of the sacred and ancient part of the world he's come to. And then she rejects this man, but not because he's a man, but because he's a man, like capital M, like human. So for her, it's not about the gender power dynamic at all. It's about the power dynamic of man versus animal. And the man oppressor side happens to be represented by a woman who is also this super confusing mix of gender stuff. She's this captain of industry and also a former sex worker. And she's nursing lepers back to health when she's not out hunting gods. Like, sure, defying gender norms is technically accurate here, but you're at like 2% on the way of explaining what's really going on. Or you take a character like Sophie. This woman puts the full force of her assertiveness, which is a very traditionally masculine trait, and it's a trait she has in spades. She goes all out assertive and taking on the role of being a cleaning lady for a bunch of boys who can't look after themselves. It's just not the right words. It's terminology that was invented to talk about other characters. So that's going to more or less be the plan here. I don't want to pretend that these terms don't apply because they are okay. What I want to do is slowly, carefully back away from these terms, not entirely, but just a bit, just enough to be able to see better identifiers which should be close by, terms that do feel right, that feel more accurate, more precise, and then zoom back in again, refocus on those terms with the goal of finding a way of talking about these characters that's more organic to who they are. So let's start with courageous. I feel like there's two types of courage you often hear talked about. There's the thing that in my head I call ahaha courage.
I laugh in the face of danger.
Which is like your intrepid, daring hero who relishes the danger. Cast caution to the wind, tonight we dine in hell, ahaha. And even though this may be kind of lacking in emotional depth to some extent, it's fun and it's 100% effective for certain kinds of stories. The second kind of courage is something you usually hear stated like explicitly as part of a pithy little lesson. Being brave isn't about not feeling fear, it's about feeling fear and doing what you have to do anyway. You hear some kind of quote like this all the time in movies. Historically, it's either attributed to Nelson Mandela or Bear Grylls, two pillars of human leadership in our time. So when we look at the brave things that Miyazaki women do, which of these types of courage are we seeing? So it seems at first like it's an interesting mix of these two. We see, for example, Chihiro in a lot of her early scenes appearing very afraid, and then she triumphs over her fear, and we get some of the antagonist women casting caution to the wind and relishing that ahaha vibe, but then you get cases like San, who's fighting a very unbalanced war, and we have no idea if she's afraid or not. It seems like she's not, but also seems like she's not relishing it at all. It's just kind of what she has to do, and that's it, end of story. Or on a different track, take Sophie, she ventures out into the waste on her own as an old lady. She's certainly not celebrating the danger, and she's also not struggling or triumphing over any fear. She's just sort of not feeling fear. Or you look at Nausicaa in this scene.
Nothing to fear. See? Nothing to fear.
Or here.
Princess!
She just knows there's nothing to be afraid of. And that's similar to probably the greatest example of Chihiro showing this trait that's maybe courage or maybe something else, which is her interaction with No Face. Everyone else is scared to death of this monster, and meanwhile Chihiro's talking to him like she talks to anyone, really. And she just calmly refuses what he asked for, and then she leaves, and then later she invites him to come along on the train. Similar to Nausicaa, it's not triumphing over fear, she just doesn't see anything to be afraid of. And I think that's also what Sophie and San have going on too. In this scene, Chihiro is on a mission. She's got something she's set her mind to get done. It's not that that fills her with boldness and bravery. Instead, it's almost like it displaces any fear she would feel. Like she just doesn't have room for it. She's got to go save her dragon boyfriend, and this giant monster guy is in her way, and she's got to get going. Like, let's wrap this up now, please. So stepping back from courageous, we're seeing a couple new ideas coming into focus here. Miyazaki's women are driven, i.e. this factor of this is what I need to do that leaves no room for fear. And then unafraid is the other word I'd zero in on here, which is this phenomenon where they're willing to approach, interact with, embrace, ignore the scary things simply because they know there's nothing to be afraid of. And once we've identified these terms, you start seeing more expressions of them elsewhere. Eboshi kills a god because she truly believes there's nothing to be afraid of. And yes, she relishes it, but it's coming from this place of not fearing what other people fear. Just like Chihiro doesn't fear what other people fear, just like Nausicaa doesn't, just like Sophie isn't afraid of Howl, or this demon she meets, or this cursed person, or even her own curse. She's not triumphing over fear, she just doesn't see it as scary or threatening. And then the driven thing, I'm not talking about ambition, it is way more basic than that. It's just knowing this is my only option. Chihiro needs to go to the boiler room, she needs to talk to Kamaji, she needs to get a job. That's what she's got to do, even if she's afraid. There just is nothing else she can do. And similarly, she needs to help the stink spirit. What else is she going to do in this moment? This is all there is to do. This is her job. She has signed her life away, and now she needs to do this crazy thing no matter how she feels about it. Sophie gets cursed, and then she just needs to go to the waste, even though it's dangerous, especially for an old woman alone. Doesn't matter. She needs to find Howl. That's the reality. And this term encompasses situations that aren't about fear as well. Satsuki has to find Mei, even if she can barely stand up, even if she's worn through her shoes. Doesn't matter if she's tired. It doesn't matter if she's scared. There's nothing she could feel that would matter more than just what she has to do now. End of story. I think this is leading to another term I want to talk about next, which is empowerment. What we've been talking about is these situations where characters need to do something difficult and they do it. So what's going on inside of them in that moment? Where's that strength coming from? And I think this is where you see an absolutely fascinating difference between Western versions of empowerment and Miyazaki's version. Think about this scene of a female character being empowered, or this scene, or this scene. Lots of empowerment in Western fiction, especially with women, involves a show of empowerment. The world has to be convinced. Many of these characters have something to prove, whether that's in their own worlds or to us, the audience, or to the general public, to the culture. There's a lot of chips on a lot of shoulders here. In Miyazaki movies, for the heroines, they don't care about a show of empowerment. They don't have something to prove. There are no chips on shoulders. For the antagonists, yes, many chips, lots of ego. But for the heroines, what's fascinating to me is that it's very empowering with very little ego. San isn't fighting for glory. She's not trying to prove anything. She's just trying to save her forest. Chihiro doesn't want anything for herself. She wants to help her parents and she wants to save Haku. Nausicaa wants to protect her people. She wants to save her world. Satsuki is all about looking after her sister. Sophie is an extremely low ego character. She starts off trying to break her curse, maybe, and then kind of seems to stop caring about that at all, and her life becomes about taking care of her new family. The closest we get to the something to prove thing is Fio. She has to prove to Porco that she's capable of fixing his plane, but listen to this.
Are you leaving because I'm a woman? Or is it because I'm too young?
Actually, it's both, kiddo.
Okay, that's fair.
It's still a surprising lack of ego here from Fio. You get the sense that this is just another barrier of many to doing this job that she wants to do, which is build planes.
So you're giving me the job? This is so exciting! I can't wait to start building.
So there is empowerment going on here, but where is it coming from? It's not like Western fiction where it's coming from this hidden potential that gets unleashed upon the world for all to see.
I am special. My mother was right.
And then we get all the fame and admiration we know we've always deserved. No, it's not coming from latent individual potential at all. It's coming from a sense of duty. To your parents, to your sister, your found family, your home, your subjects, your clients, your marshmallow, floaty cloud kids. And once again, landing on that term duty, you start seeing it elsewhere too. Yes, Chihiro acts out of a sense of duty to her parents, but then also on a smaller scale, she has a job. She has actual duties to fulfill for her employer. And that kind of helps her understand her capabilities in fulfilling her larger duties. Sophie, too, her life has always been about duty, even before the curse.
Now, Sophie, do you really want to spend the rest of your life in that hat shop?
The shop was just so important to Father, And I'm the eldest, I don't mind.
And I'm not going to talk in too much detail about the boy and the heron, at least not in this video, but duty completely dominates every aspect of that movie as well. And then you also see duty by the antagonist as well. Eboshi, of course, is all about duty to humans. That's what drives every decision she makes. Every strength she has begins with a duty to her fellow ex-brothel girls, or the lepers she takes care of, or the citizens to her town. Yubaba is also empowered from her work. She is a bit complainy about her duties.
Can't believe I took that oath. To give a job to anyone who asks. Ridiculous. I hate being so nice.
But she is honestly just really dedicated to her work.
Ben, you did great.
Even if it's for less than noble reasons.
We made so much money.
And then also on a more minor scale, she's a mother, and we see duty defining her character there too. And this seems to be part of a much more fundamental aspect of Miyazaki's characters on the whole. His male characters are also all about duty, although we'll soon see that they have a slightly different relationship to it. And then a lot of his antagonists are characters with absolutely no sense of duty whatsoever. You got Curtis, you got the Witch of the Waste, you got Jigo, Chihiro's parents, all purely indulgent or ambitious or just in it for themselves. And we can add Yubaba to that list as well for being resentful of her duty, as we just saw, for being committed to her work only due to selfish greed, and for being misguided in carrying out her parental duties. But this discussion of duty brings us to another term, which I think we've been skirting around so far but not directly addressing. I think this is a particularly interesting one: independent. So again, taking a broader look, independent how, independent from what, and it's pretty plain to just look at these characters and their situations and realize it's not that these characters are independent, they're alone. Circumstance has isolated them in some way. And it's actually a pretty surprising variety of ways, because they're not like completely isolated, but their lives have all been impacted by some form of isolation or social separation. The clearest examples, we have Chihiro, who's left alone in the spirit world, abandoned by her parents. We also have San, abandoned by her parents. Kiki's story starts with her leaving her family and going out on her own. Sophie goes into self-imposed exile once she's cursed. You also have Satsuki and Mei, who have been left without a mother. And then the less straightforward examples, Nausicaa is alone ideologically. She's the only one in her world who believes the toxic jungle isn't evil. You got Fio, who's a girl in a STEM field in the 1920s. Gina is a widow 3 times over. All 3 of her husbands have died. And even looking at Irontown, aside from the relationship to the setting itself demonstrating their isolation and separation, the women of Irontown, Eboshi included, were all former sex workers, and that undoubtedly came with severe social ostracization. And it's true that all these characters eventually find companionship or community or family. That's a huge part of their arc, but that's only after some period of isolation. So I think viewing their independence in terms of this pattern changes the feel of it pretty significantly. Again, it's not big, strong, independent woman, chip on my shoulder, prove to the world I'm different, prove I'm not like the other girls, something like that. No, when these characters make decisions that go against the grain, that set them apart from how other people think and how other people behave, there's no hesitation in that because they are already apart in some sense. They already have experienced being alone, and that changes their orientation to these types of decisions. And maybe that can go back and explain what we said about these characters' relationship to fear. In situations where others react with fear, these characters are open to seeing things differently, especially when it's about another party who's also alone. When everyone else is afraid of No-Face, Chihiro just sees another person like her who doesn't belong. Sophie just sees another being suffering under a curse like hers. Nausicaa just sees another lonely creature who the world refuses to understand. And Gina falls in love with the loneliest pilot in the sky. Once we're talking about independence and isolation in this way, I think we can take another big step in understanding the writing here, because we're not just talking about these characters, we're talking about the world they inhabit as well. And I think that's where a lot of the nuance has been missing from the conversations about these female characters. So much of it isn't about their traits, their personalities, it's about the greater story they're a part of. It's about their relationships to other characters, it's about their journey and where that takes them. So let's talk about that. If the starting line of these characters is isolation, if we take a second and just back up and look what's behind that starting line, you see that Miyazaki's characters almost always inhabit what I would call a closed world. It's the forest versus Irontown. Which side are you on? Are you with us or against us? There's no middle ground, there's no compromise, nothing. The toxic jungle and its insects are death. It's black and white. End of story. Howl's world is at war. You're either with the government or you're my enemy. Women can't be engineers. Period. That's it. The rise of fascism, you're with us, you're against us. Spirited Away, I think, is the most complex version of this. I would say a better word to use than closed here is rigid. We encounter this workplace with a super rigid way the whole operation works. From what you must do, to where you must go, to your place in it. There's an incredibly rigid hierarchy. You got Yubaba at the top, what she says goes. You got all these rules that no one likes, not even her own kid. And it creates a social environment where everyone has very rigid opinions about what's good and what's bad. Haku, bad. Newts, good. Stink spirit bad, money good. That's the end of the conversation. And then, either as a direct result of the closed world or just along with it, we get that isolated orientation to the world that we just talked about, isolated by family, by your parents, by choice, ideologically, social norms, life circumstance, or just everyday circumstance, like Mei being left alone while Satsuki goes to school, and that's hard for her. And this alone is already just a really powerful setup for a story. We got so much built-in tension here. But then the next step is what I think makes these characters captivating in a uniquely Miyazaki way. Because a lot of stories start out with protagonists who are alone or ostracized or whatever, but there's a much different emotional tone, not just to the stories, but to the characters themselves. And you compare that to Studio Ghibli movies, and there's just a distinctive feel you only find with these movies. And to understand this, we need to talk about a specific Ghibli female protagonist. And I am saying Ghibli here, not Miyazaki, but I think it doesn't just fit here. I think it really exemplifies this rare characteristic Miyazaki women tend to have. The character I'm talking about is Tsukishima Shizuku from Whisper of the Heart. And if you don't recognize that name or haven't seen the movie, there's a good chance you still know the character, just under a different moniker. These days, Shizuku's more well-known nickname is Lo-Fi Girl, aka Chilled Cow, aka the patron saint of chill beats, always there at any time of the day, watching over us and blessing us with chill hip-hop beats to relax/study to. Now, this itself isn't Shizuku. The lore is that they were using loop footage from Whisper of the Heart, this scene of Shizuku studying at her desk, and they were hit, of course, with a copyright takedown, but then the channel re-emerged with new original art that was inspired by that original clip of Shizuku. But I think there's a reason why a clip like that and a character like that wasn't just chosen as the face of this channel, but became super iconic and memeified in its own right. When people talk about why they love Studio Ghibli movies, they're often not talking about the storylines themselves. I think it really is this exact vibe, and Ghibli movies are filled to the brim with this vibe. Whether it's Chihiro and Lin chilling on the balcony after work, or Sophie and Markle doing chores around the castle, or Nausicaa in the jungle waiting out a spore fall during her specimen run, or even Eboshi working with a gunsmith on a new rifle. The Boy and the Heron, we got Kiriko fishing. Porco Rosso is filled with moments like this. You got Porco flying, you got him hanging out in Gina's restaurant, napping on the beach, waiting around while his plane is being repaired. People love this mood, so what is it? What's the emotion here? What's the feeling? And why do we like it? And from what I can tell, it's not just something people like. People want to immerse themselves in this. There's almost a daydreaming quality about these moments on our end. We want to be Lo-Fi Girl. We want to embody that vibe, that mood while studying. We want this lo-fi, chill mode of being to be our mode of being instead of what? What do we want this to replace exactly? So just start off super basic, identifying what we're seeing here. This is relaxing, but it's not this kind of relaxing, lounging, luxuriating, being pampered. It's chill, but it's not lazy. It's not carefree, we're still working, or we're done with a workday, or we're on break. In those types of moments, apparently this is the mood we want, but again, instead of what? How do we feel when we're working, or after work, or when we're taking a break? And I don't know about you, but it's pretty difficult to just work peacefully like this, or even to take a break peacefully, because all the thoughts just won't stop. I'm thinking about how much editing still needs to get done. Is the video going to be finished on time? Or should I push this part off to tomorrow? Or maybe I change my schedule on Wednesday. Oh shoot, I have to message this person, set up this meeting, and pay this bill, and buy this thing on Amazon. But which one should I buy? Is this too expensive? Should I budget more? Am I being financially irresponsible? That's why I got to finish this YouTube thing on time. Maybe I should pull an all-nighter. But I got terrible sleep last night. I should sleep better. I should eat better. I should take care of my health more. I'm so exhausted. I have a headache. Do I have cancer? Am I having a heart attack? I think I'm dying. Or I'm trying to just work, but I freaking hate this part. I am bored out of my mind, and that's making me frustrated. But no, I gotta accept this. I just gotta accept it. But I don't want to do my work. I want to do fun stuff. No, that's stupid schnee, stupid. Just keep your head down and work. Just be lo-fi, go be this. Why can't you just work like this? So I'm exaggerating a bit, but I think that's what it comes down to. There's daydreaming about being on vacation and being rich and never having to work again. Basically having this totally different life where we don't have any of life's problems. But that's a little too unrealistic. So instead we can fantasize about a person who's at peace with the life they have. The word I landed on here, which I'm like 90% happy with, is that Lo-Fi Girl is not neurotic. And we are kind of neurotic. Modern life just makes everyone neurotic. And with this particular fantasy, we're daydreaming about life without all the frustrating, spirally looping thoughts. Our life, the same life with work, with responsibilities, but to be able to just not be anxious and kind of sad and worked up when we're working. And be able to take a break when we're taking a break. Be present, embrace what our life is now. And I think this quality of not neurotic is a huge part of why we love the women in Miyazaki movies. And it's more than the way we just talked about. Yes, they made peace with their duties, their jobs, their responsibilities, and they can be in the moment for those parts of their lives without anxiety and avoidance and frustration making them go crazy. But then also these women are unapologetic about what they want. Whether that's their ideals and morals and goals.
You must not burn down the toxic jungle. You should have left the giant warrior beneath the earth.
or they want money,
Then you did great. We made so much money.
or they like someone,
Ponyo loves Sosuke!
or they don't like someone.
Go away.
They can say this stuff out loud, directly to your face, without feeling self-conscious or insecure. These are not characters who are racked by self-doubt and regret and inner confusion. They live life with purpose and a strong, unobstructed will. They feel emotion honestly, both positive and negative emotion, and when it comes time to turn in, they can sleep well at night. It is a very rare characteristic to focus in on the way Miyazaki does, but I think these characters really are inspiring to people in a way that they often aren't even aware of. We need more of this non-neurotic energy in our lives because we aren't like that. And I think that's where the men come in. I think there's a big contrast with Miyazaki's male protagonists. The men are a little neurotic in this way. I'm not talking about like Woody Allen levels of neurotic, not that type. They still don't care that much about what people think about them. They are willful, they do speak their mind, but they are lost in a way that the women aren't. You think of characters like Howl, or Porco, or Ashitaka, or Haku, or Mahito, and these characters are out in the world just kind of wandering, trying to find their place, and at least at first, not finding it. All these characters are really amazing at duty on a small scale. They can fight, they can do magic, they can help people. They actually help a lot of people on this happenstance type basis, but the idea of a bigger goal is obscured, it's clouded, and there's the struggle or frustration or rebelling or even just like a brooding vibe when it comes to figuring out what you're supposed to be in a bigger sense. The best example of this is Kanta in My Neighbor Totoro. This kid is filled to the brim with masculine energy, and he has no outlet for it. He's not useless, he's just kind of lost when it comes to what to do with himself. Until Mei runs away, Satsuki needs to find her, and then we have this glorious moment of him rising to meet this new calling as a man to help out this person in need. And similarly, Howl finds his purpose, Haku finds himself, finds his name, Hashitaka figures out where he stands. These are all glorious moments for the characters of breaking through that struggle and finding that purpose or duty or place or identity. It's them coming out of their lost state. And then meanwhile, contrast that with the women, San just knows she's a wolf. She's gonna fight the human, she's gonna save her forest. And Eboshi knows she's a human, and she's gonna go kill some gods and take care of some humans. Nausicaa is a princess and has all these princess duties, but unlike Asbel, she always has the big picture in mind. Her duty, first and foremost, is fixing her world and protecting the life in it. This part is not a struggle at all for these women. This is the easy part for them. Even Chihiro is really scared about what her life is turning into. She's really sad about it, and she freaks out a bit, and she has a good cry, and then she accepts her life as a worker and doesn't look back. And then when something more important comes along, she has zero hesitation about that either, and she just leaves. She gets right to it. Sometimes these characters are even wrong about the big picture and their place in it, but even that doesn't seem to faze them. Eboshi kills the forest god, and then he destroys Irontown, and Eboshi seems totally ready and eager to change her ways.
We're going to start all over again. This time we'll build a better town.
No conflict, no frustration, just it's time to change. San, despite this growing relationship with Ashitaka, is at no point torn between the human world and the forest, like in a Romeo and Juliet sense, oh, the agony, cruel fate, why? No, just like Chihiro, she has little moments of frustration.
I hate him. I hate all humans.
And then it passes, and she's done, and she doesn't look back. She knows her place is in the forest, she warns of Ashitaka, wants to incorporate that too, and that's that. And I think this helps us identify another characteristic, or really place it, find an address for it. Some Miyazaki women, not all of them, but many of them, have this brilliant energy to them. Sometimes it's in the speed of their movements, sometimes it's in how they walk, sometimes it's in their posture, sometimes it comes through as enthusiasm or playfulness or ferocity, and this stands out so much even within these stories. It's just rare seeing a person in fiction or in reality who doesn't seem beaten down by life, and then who also isn't possessed with energy that feels maniacal or grandiose or even just negative. And it's because the source of this energy isn't negative. The source isn't some terrifying inner demon. The source is a pure spirit when it's completely unobstructed by inner struggle. It's something we can imagine, but most of us probably haven't experienced. If you can picture taking all that energy that's wasted on overthinking and spiraling and self-doubt and self-consciousness and bitterness and resentment and frustration, all these facets of the neurotic experience we all know too well from being modern humans in this modern world, imagine freeing up that energy and think about how you would be, how it would feel to wake up in the morning with a noble purpose you have 100% embraced, how it would feel to go about your day without any little scrap of your attention caught up in what other people think of you, without a single ounce wasted on worrying you're not good enough. Every emotion just comes out honest and raw and full, and every action can have the entire force of your being behind it. That absolutely would shine through as enthusiasm or joy or frosty or whatever else you're feeling. That would reflect in your gait, in your posture. It would infuse every little movement of yours with life. And if you had someone moving and acting like this who didn't have that inner world that had earned this degree of energy, it wouldn't feel the same. It wouldn't feel right. I think subconsciously we do sense that it's coming from who these women are. It's coming from the inside. It's something in them that's overflowing. It's their spirit shining through so brightly we can see it in everything they do. And it's also not just some static trait, by the way. This is what allows them to do all the amazing things they do. It's what allows them to emerge from isolation and ostracization to lead an entire town and kill gods, or to raid a fortress on your own, or to move to a new city alone, or to design a kick-ass plane when you're a 17-year-old girl, or to go on a long journey to save your dragon boyfriend, or to do this. Which is kind of crazy. But the point is, powerful agency has to come from somewhere. It's not enough to just make your nobody loser of a main character just decide to turn their life around all of a sudden. They have to have something inside of them that can do something like that. Something big, something strong, something that not everyone would have in their situation, but they have it. And that makes all the difference. So the upshot of all this is that we're getting a really interesting type of aspirational with these characters. When I daydream about being Captain America or Goku, it's because of what these characters can do. When I daydream about being Kiki or Sophie, it's because they have a lifestyle and a mental relationship to that lifestyle that we'd love to have. We aspire for moments like this where we see Chihiro having this mood we would love to feel. When we admire a character like San, yes, she fights and she rides around on wolves and stuff, that's cool, but if it wasn't for the romance of her life, I'm not talking about love, I'm talking about the romance of the singular purpose her life has, this noble loyalty to nature, and how there's not a single iota of her being that doubts that this is what her life is meant to be, even if it means storming Irontown alone. If it wasn't for that life and the mindset attached to it, no one would even care about the fighting or the wolves. Okay, but there's a problem with all this that I think we have to acknowledge. And it has to do with the fact that that term I landed on, not neurotic, just isn't really the best way to describe the situation fully. I think it's accurate and it's a crucial step to where we're going next, but now that we have a fuller picture of this, I think a better description of what we're talking about here is that these characters have very little inner conflict. And that's potentially a big problem, because lack of inner conflict is a quick recipe for a boring character. I think about all my favorite characters, they're all about the inner conflict. That is where the magic happens. So that's my question on this. How do we keep these characters compelling if there's not much drama going on with their inner worlds? And if we try to compensate with the lack of inner conflict by piling on external conflict, like just cranking up the plot stuff, then the problem gets even bigger. Because think about the type of plot stuff other movies do. We're gonna fight the bad guy, we're gonna win the war, maybe there's some kind of big money we're aiming for, maybe some kind of fame, maybe it's romance. And you look at Miyazaki is a pacifist, so we're not winning any wars, we're not solving our problems with fighting. Miyazaki movies don't have bad guys, so we're not doing that either. Miyazaki doesn't have much respect for money or fame, and then also romance. Miyazaki is very big on love, and that's something we'll talk about, but his movies are often about kids, so big romance is also just not really an option. So what are these girls doing if they're not winning fights and making money and living the American dream, or brooding and agonizing over inner demons? And the answer, of course, is that they're making friends with the demons. And I think this is the other huge thing that we absolutely love about these characters. I started noticing this with these moments.
Oh, you want to come with us?
Ready to launch!
Tato, hold on!
Miyazaki just loves doing this Wizard of Oz type vibe, where you have this little party of misfits all going somewhere together. But unlike Wizard of Oz, where that is the main story and each of these characters have their own plot goals, here there's no apparent reason why these people are coming along for the ride. Seems like the point is just this cozy vibe of snuggling up together to go on an adventure, until you think about that greater context we discussed earlier. These characters live in broken worlds where everyone hates each other. Animals hate humans, humans hate animals, we got nations at war, we got wizards feuding, pilots feuding, Lin hates Haku, and this is a world that has unfortunately kind of chewed up and spat out our girls. It's cursed them, it's put them in unfair, unbalanced situations, it's taken away their loved ones, parents, husbands, it's isolated them, it's told them, you don't belong. And what do? How do they treat the monsters in their lives? They give them umbrellas, they feed them porridge, they pay for their bus fare. This is more than just being kind and pure. These characters have an inner harmony in a disharmonious society. They are unabashedly simple in worlds that are hopelessly complex. complex. They're scions of peace in nations at war. And that last one is flip for San Ashitaka. But hey, Ashitaka's cool hanging out with women, so that's fine. But that's the point of these characters. These characters have an openness that's born from their outsider identities. They're not afraid of gods. They identify with the cursed and the shunned. They're willing to walk towards what scares other people. And their stories aren't about getting closer to victory. They're about advancing in that openness. They're about healing their broken worlds, bringing people together, bringing peace, helping others find their true path, their true selves, and adopt that same beautiful lo-fi mindset. The final steps of these characters' arcs is about breaking through barriers. They break curses, they break binaries, they break control, they break mindsets that have destroyed their worlds, they break gender barriers, they even break geological barriers sometimes. That's the type of heroism these characters embody. Their journey is to take that harmony from the inside and project it outward to the external world. Take it from its broken, chaotic, neurotic state and transform it into a lo-fi world. I think a related oddity gets explained here, that when you have movies that end at the beginning or end at a beginning, like Returning to Your World, memories completely wiped, or everything is destroyed and we start from scratch, the question is, how is that an ending if we're back at square one? And the answer is that it's this type of endpoint that forces you to acknowledge, to feel the progress that's been made on a spiritual level, for lack of a better term. Spiritual here meaning relating to the deeper values that underlie the superficial physical world. Miyazaki women are spiritual heroes. They have spiritual strengths that they use to save spiritually bankrupt worlds from spiritually bankrupt people who subjected to spiritual peril. And there's usually a parallel physical danger that helps us keep track of this deeper kind of health, but that's only there to prove to us what really matters. And that's the realm of action for these heroes' journeys. It's worth pointing out that this doesn't have to do with women necessarily, as we see with some of Miyazaki's men who take on similar roles, but I think Miyazaki recognizes accurately that there is in real life a trend of men getting lost spiritually, getting lost in the physical, caring too much about it, too much about money and reputation, and getting sucked into these battles over all that stupid stuff. And that contrasts also in real life with women, whose traditional responsibilities have included a lot of non-physical duties, like raising children and providing emotional care, and making a home that's comfortable and peaceful. And yeah, women have been excluded from a lot of the overly physical stuff, but maybe somehow that's fostered a mindset that does value less physical things, like love and emotions and relationships. Miyazaki is a huge feminist, but he doesn't seem like the type of feminist who's put off by traditional gender stuff. And you see the value he places on it all over his movies. Sophie is a housekeeper. It's what she wants to do. And her story is about the importance of that role. San is a warrior, but she spends half her screen time taking care of other people. Her mother, Ashitaka, Akoto. Eboshi is the exact same way. Theo is an engineer, but we also get little moments like this.
I'll go make us some coffee and then I'll get back to work.
I think looking at this stuff and also looking at the stuff that defies gender norms, you really just see what Miyazaki does value. He's just pro-women. He thinks women are amazing, and he wants them to be able to do what they want to do. If that's the traditional stuff, that is so important. That is the spiritual foundation that underlies everything in our lives. And if it's the other stuff, then you go, girl. Go fight human supremacy, go do science, do art, build planes, burn birds, whatever you want to do, more power to you. At no point does he want women feeling lesser because they're women. The closest we get is that Theo scene.
Are you leaving because I'm a woman?
But even here, that doesn't really bother her. She just brushes it off and finds a way to do what her womanhood is supposedly preventing, and she does it, and it's glorious. And the chauvinist male pig becomes a significantly less chauvinist male pig. Still a pig, but less chauvinist. And I think that's the other thing people really appreciate about these characters as feminist icons, that almost all these women have close relationships with men that they cherish. Being a man isn't this bad thing. Sometimes it's bad, just like sometimes the women are bad, but since Miyazaki's protagonists are all about harmony, of course we're not going to see some story about girls beating the boys. Boys are gross, men are trash. That defeats the whole purpose of these types of heroes and these types of stories. If we do have some kind of contentious relationship with men, if we have situations where men are being creepy or being clingy or being pushy, the reaction we see is to just get away from it, and maybe, if we're lucky, we can help them too. And I think this brings us to the last major feature of Miyazaki heroines. And in my opinion, this is the most perplexing of them all. I'm talking about love. This is a prominent topic with nearly all the major female characters Miyazaki writes. And in my opinion, it's always been kind of weird. Like, tell me what this scene even means.
We must test the boy. If Sosuke's love is true.
It's a big responsibility, but I really love her.
So he's a 5-year-old boy, and she's a goldfish. What? Or you have Turnip Head in Howl's Moving Castle not just falling in love with Sophie, but considering her his one true love. Where did that come from? Chihiro and Haku, of course, is also weird because she's a child and he's a body of water, and also they barely know each other. Ashitaka and San, I don't really understand why they fall in love, if they even do fall in love. I don't really know what this relationship is supposed to be. It's kind of just vague from beginning to end. And honestly, I have the same question about Howl and Sophie, definitely the most traditional romance in any of the movies, but I have no idea why they fall for each other. And this seems like a topic that Miyazaki almost feels a compulsion to force into every movie in some form. Even if it's not like an actual romantic relationship, we still see attempts at romance or unrequited love, or some kind of romantic tension, or even just hints of preteen romantic tension. So what's this about? What does Miyazaki see in love? What does he want to say about love? And then I think the big question, when I think about love, I'm thinking about romantic feelings and attraction and a desire for intimacy and closeness. I'm thinking some form of you complete me. I may be thinking about destiny also, like this is who I want to spend the rest of my life with.
I'm your density.
And for being real, that's just not what's going on in any of these examples. These are childhood friendships. It's people who help each other, who support each other. It's people whose goals are aligned. And that's not romance. So the question is, why treat it like romance? Okay, so I'm going to link a video that has a slightly more normal approach to what all this is about. It's not that different from what I'm going to say, but I'm just concerned that what I'm about to say is going to be slightly biased based on my own values. Although I do think that they align with Miyazaki's here, so maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, I think where this starts is that somehow, at some point in human history, it's like the whole world decided love is just the greatest thing ever in the entire human experience. And the highest form of this greatest value in modern times is specifically romantic love. And that starts with love at first sight. It progresses into a big dramatic kiss, and from there, eventually sex. And this is the one true love that every character in every story seems to be looking for. And once they find it, that equals happily ever after. It's like a sure thing, 100%. That's the formula. And Miyazaki sees all this and he rejects it. And this is evidenced by the biggest romantic failure in his movies, Curtis. Curtis is like the symbol of dumb modern Hollywood values in Miyazaki's movies. He's all about superficial things and reputation. He's full of ambition to become famous. And then of course we get the love at first sight based on attraction, which for him translates obviously into lifelong commitment because happily ever after. And Miyazaki's characters react to that with a mixture of amusement and confusion, and they reject him. Theo is not moved by his advances, and Gina of course rejects him and even says this to him explicitly.
Love is a little bit more complicated here than it is in America.
So here's my theory. Taking a connection like a childhood friendship and people helping each other and supportive partnerships and slapping on a loaded term like love as a label, even if it doesn't quite fit. It's almost like Miyazaki is forcing us to reckon with the question, what if this was the type of love that we held up as humanity's highest value? What if the thing we cared about most in life, the thing we made every pop song about, the arc we included in every Hollywood movie, the thing we believed would fill us with bliss and joy, the thing we truly believed would lead to happily ever after, wasn't love at first sight and kisses and sex, but helping each other, healing each other, equality, and partnership. Like, take a moment and actually imagine if instead of going on Tinder or going out to a bar or a club looking for interactions that were based on superficial attraction with the end goal of sex, if instead people went on apps and went out at night looking to help people and make connections based on deep supportive partnership and equality and just appreciating their presence and their time with you, maybe for no reason at all, just forming a bond with them based on the fact that you're two living beings who share the same planet. It's a little bit cheesy and it doesn't feel like it fits with our modern mindsets and lifestyles, but that is Miyazaki's world. And that is the kind of love that he wants his women to be champions of. I think it's a beautiful idea. So what have we learned today? We started out with these terms that were kind of formulated through Western data that didn't really seem like they translated well into Miyazaki heroines and antagonists. So let's see if we can arrange our new terms into a formulation that does a better job. So Miyazaki women are characters who find themselves in a broken, rigid, spiritually bankrupt environment. Whether that's a cursed world, or a divided society, or a rigid social hierarchy. And these women are shouldered with a duty, and because they've been isolated by their divided, broken environments, that gives them this unique openness in how they relate to the world. They're unafraid of what others fear, they feel no need to prove or explain themselves to their peers, and they are able and willing to connect with those that others have refused to connect with. And the foundation all this rests on is inner harmony. It's that lofi ethos. That's the source of their boundless drive and energy. It's the reason for that magnetism that they exude that brings everyone together and shapes their journey to break through barriers, to project that inner harmony outward and heal their world and the people around them. And at the center of all this is love, Not romantic love, but friendships, supportive partnerships, helpful interactions, which get all these trappings of romantic love because that's the esteem Miyazaki wants us to feel for these relationships. What he wants us to celebrate is a world where spiritual harmony is the highest value and where people help each other and hug each other and feel feelings of bliss and closeness and warmth, not because of superficial attraction or lust, but because I value you as another human being who shares my world. In Miyazaki's view, that's a true hero, and that's what being a woman is all about. Subscribe. Who is your favorite Miyazaki woman and why? Let me know in the comments. It's been a fascinating ride trying to understand Miyazaki in this way because he is so intuition-based that anytime you think you see a pattern, he just kind of slips right out of it and does something else. Like I mentioned how Ashitaka and San are reversed for some of the male-female patterns I talked about. Another one is Kiki not really fitting into the no inner conflict thing, or maybe she is fitting into it in a different way. Maybe it's like this lo-fi way of dealing with inner conflict, something like that. It's just hard to nail some of the stuff down, so I tried to focus more on the general trends. And it's also, by the way, just kind of unfortunate on my end that I don't know some of the movies as well as others, like Laputa and The Wind Rises, and even Kiki to some degree. I wish I could incorporate those more. I'm sure they have a lot of nuance to provide to the type of topics I'm talking about. But yeah, so I'd love to hear who people connect to, who's your favorite, who you find particularly interesting, compelling, and also if anyone has any ideas about other features of the Miyazaki girl/women writing style that I may have missed, definitely leave a comment, share your thoughts. New thing to announce, I'm going to be trying out uploading extended segments of my videos on Patreon. Basically, every so often I have parts of videos that I have to cut, or I have parts that I want to add, but it's already too late into the editing process, and I realized, why not share that in some form? Make it accessible to the people who would be interested in that kind of stuff. So I'm going to be giving that a try through Patreon, and if you're interested but that doesn't work for you, at some point I do hope to do a second channel for stuff like this, where this kind of content would be made available for everyone, but no concrete plans on the horizon yet for a schnee bonus channel. But yeah, for this video, a topic I realized I really should address is how Miyazaki uses beauty and appearance when it comes to his female characters. And usually I think these extended segments will be in the form of like maybe a 4-ish minute bonus video, and that's what I thought this one would clock in at. Ended up being about 8 minutes, and I'm not going to do much editing on these, it's going to be basically just audio. So yeah, check that out if you wish. I'm going to leave a little preview of that at the end of this video, but yeah, I think it's a really cool topic, so check that out if you wish. If you're interested in that, or you've just generally been enjoying the content lately, consider supporting the channel via Patreon. Join the Schnee Patron Discord server. Huge thanks again to everyone on there. Huge thanks to all subscribers as well, everyone who's been following along, liking videos, sharing videos, commenting on videos. Stay tuned for more Miyazaki content. The next video will be on the saddest Miyazaki movie, in my opinion. And note that I am saying Miyazaki, not Ghibli. I will leave it at that, leave you guys guessing. And after that, hopefully something about The Boy and the Heron. So subscribe so you won't miss all that. Hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching. When Ashitaka calls San beautiful, she's not taken aback because a man is calling her pretty and her heart is fluttering and she's about to go all Juliet over him. It's because San has never been valued for anything about her humanity ever. Like, food is amazing because it tastes good and it sustains us, and it's a special experience that people bond over, and that just doesn't automatically come through whenever there's food on the screen. But if you make every aspect of this food experience beautiful, then it draws us